Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. Joining us today, all the way from Chicago's Hyde Park, is author Blue Balliett. And she's going to talk about her very first book called Chasing Vermeer, marvelously illustrated by Brett Hellquist and wonderfully published by Scholastic Press. And we welcome you aboard. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
You know, it's difficult for me. I don't know how to talk to you, how to declare that you're here, because you've been called so many things. You've been called Wonder Woman, Chicago's answer to Harry Potter, and a book that you have written is called The Da Vinci Code for Tweens. I mean, this is all as a first author. I don't know. You know, this is great stuff.
It's
seriously,
crazy, isn't it?
And it really is wonderful things to say about the book. But I think rather than talk about what we in the business call the sizzle, first, I'd like to talk about the book first. Because Chasing Vermeer is a very different kind of book. It's described loosely, I think, as a new mystery novel for young readers, but that hardly suggests the fact that it centers on the art world. It's a book that has unexplainable occurrences. It brings two characters, Petra and Calder, together. Strange things happen all over the place. They seem to be unrelated. Then they connect. An eccentric old woman seeks their company, and an invaluable Vermeer painting disappears. And before you know it, you have what the publisher calls a puzzle wrapped in a mystery, disguised as an adventure, and delivered as a work of art. You do all this by yourself?
I know. This whole experience has been amazing because the book lived in my head for a good many years. I was a classroom teacher for 10 of the last 12 years.
Where was that?
At the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools in Hyde Park, right in the book. That's actually the school that appears in the book.
That's right. In fact, there's a marvelous downtown map of Hyde Park in the book.
Disguised.
Yeah. Okay.
So
thinly disguised?
Yes, thinly disguised.
Okay.
But I could not be more shocked myself at the reception the book has gotten, because it is packed with odd ideas. And as I was writing it, I couldn't really see that there was any place for it on the market. It didn't fit into any particular genre slot that I could see out there.
Well, as a matter of fact, as I recall it, the reason that you say you got started on the book in the first place is that you were teaching a class and you wanted to get into art and art history in a way that would be interesting to what were you doing, fourth graders?
Third grade.
Third graders.
Little guys, yeah.
And so you started looking around and there weren't nothing there.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I was actually looking for a good read-aloud for my class, a book that connected an exciting mystery and some substantial art ideas or issues. And the only book I could find was written 30 years ago and is still wonderful. It's The Mixed-Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsberg.
And she is still alive.
She's still alive, yeah. She's just a marvelous writer. The kids love that story. It's about two kids who run away to the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And after we had read that book aloud, they said to me, "So, can we read another?" So I said, "I'll see what I can find." And I actually could not find a chapter book to read to them that had big art ideas in it. And I couldn't find an American one. I couldn't find a British one. And that was the beginning of Chasing Vermeer, because my background is in art history, and I thought, well, I could give this a try. I'll see what I can write for my class.
And I guess in a way it all began, did it begin with the two central youth characters, Petra and Calder, who are just wonderfully real, kids. They're smart, they're bright.
Good.
And they talk like normal folks.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they both realize that they're a little bit off center as far as what they're interested in and that kind of thing.
As far as the rest of the class goes,
yeah.
They're kind of loners. Yeah, I like the idea a lot of having characters who were good thinkers, but not self-consciously smart kids. Because I think most kids, if given the opportunity, can be terrific problem solvers, even kids we think of as being ordinary kids. So I wanted that kind of a child in this book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they're very interested in solving problems, and when things get going, they're not afraid,
right?
To push the envelope, as we say these days.
They aren't afraid to follow their intuitions and to take some chances and to put together some odd ideas.
Chasing Vermeer is everything they say it is. It's a puzzle wrapped in a mystery, disguised as an adventure, says an awful lot about art. It's all these things, however, because of one central idea. And when we come back, I want to talk about that idea.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Yes, this is Conversations on the Coast. Today, the publisher of note is Scholastic Press. The title of the book, Chasing Vermeer. The author in the studio with us, Blue Balliett. The illustrator, and we'll get to him sometime soon, is Brett Hellquist. And we need to get to him eventually because he's a very important illustrator, and you're very fortunate to have him on board.
I certainly am.
You folks out there who know Lemony Snicket know Mr. Brett Hellquist's work.
Right.
Now, we'll talk about that later. The New York Times Book Review liked the book a lot. Balliett, a first-time novelist, has taken the literary craze for intellectual sleuthing, which allows readers to feel smart and stuffed with information while not actually having to do any heavy lifting, academic lifting themselves, and combined it with a fidelity to old-fashioned Trail of Clues children's books, resulting in a novel about a stolen Vermeer painting that is suspenseful, exciting, charming, and, in a New York Times Book Review remark, even unexpectedly moving. They didn't want to quite go overboard there. On the other hand, that's just one indication that you've come a long way from the laundry room.
Right.
That's
want me to elaborate on that?
Yes, I think you better. I don't want them calling in. Tell them why you come from the laundry room to my studio.
Here, right?
Yes.
That's a good question.
Yes.
I have two teenagers at home, and I began the book, it was a long time ago. It's kind of embarrassing. It was 6 years ago. I was teaching full-time. And the only place where I could work in my house and be sure that nobody else would come in and join me was the laundry room.
No one wants to fold clothes.
It was not
That's an
inviting
American truism.
Right.
No family member wants to fold clothes.
Right. It was just the cat. So I actually still work in there.
On a laptop.
On a laptop, right? And for years I worked on a bed next to a big mound of unfolded laundry, which I still don't fold on principle.
You're holding out. You're holding out. Okay, so from that, if you will, humble beginning. I mean,
yes,
don't mean to put down
humble.
your laundry room, but it's not
humble.
a writing studio.
That's right.
Okay, here's what has happened to this first-time novelist. This book has what I would call universal acceptance and approval. It will be published in 14 different countries. The movie rights have been bought by Warner Brothers Pictures. It has rave reviews from the Times Book Review, which we just read. It's been featured in the Chicago Tribune, where the author appeared as the cover girl on the Chicago Tribune Sunday magazine. Publishers Weekly was in love with it. So is Booklist. Newsweek had it in its Hot Choices column or something like that. It's been on the New York Times Book Review bestseller list for 10 weeks, okay? And it is, as we said at the beginning, the Da Vinci Code for tweens. And really, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a marvelous ride, and How did it all happen?
Yeah, well, it really came out of my third grade classroom. It came out of my years as a teacher. And if somebody had told me just a couple of years ago that this was going to happen, I have to say, in the school in which I was teaching, there wasn't room in the lunchroom for the little kids. So I had lunch with them in our classroom every day. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, as you can imagine, I was scraping bits of Twinkie off the floor and, hunting down the runaway salami and pulling thumbtacks out of the bottoms of my sneakers.
And slipping on mayonnaise.
Absolutely. So to have all of this happen on the heels of 10 years of being in the classroom is a very weird experience. The whole thing has been quite astounding.
The way you've put this is you say that I've discovered in your teaching that kids really do learn best when they are tackling real-world problems, issues that don't necessarily have an easy answer and that also concern adults. Right. That's the idea at the heart of my book. And I take it a step further as I read the book. Mm-hmm. Kids should be dealing, I think, in your opinion, with questions that don't have ready answers or answers at all, because the important part in terms of education is the question and the experience of the question.
Right. No, I'd agree with that. I think that's a really good summary of some of my basic feelings about how kids best learn. I feel as though us teachers learn huge amounts about how kids perceive the world and how they put ideas together, and we don't often have a place to express it. And I think I was very lucky because I was able to use years and years of teaching in writing this book. And one of the things that I felt kids taught me was that their minds are really most awake when they're doing something that feels relevant in the real world, too. Mm-hmm. And even though they're young, they know. They definitely know when,
In Chasing Vermeer, the characters are as delicious as the plot. We'll look at some of them when we return.
Okay.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Blue Balliett Day on Conversations on the Coast. She's here to talk about her first novel, a children's novel called Chasing Vermeer, illustrated by Brett Hellquist, published by Scholastic Press. The Bible of Book Publishing, Publishers Weekly, says, puzzles nest within puzzles in this ingeniously plotted and tightly delivered first novel that, revolving around the heist of a Vermeer painting, also touches on the nature of coincidence, wow, does it, truth, art, and similarly meaty topics. Thick with devilish red herrings. This is like we're going to sit down and have dinner.
You can think with them,
devilish red herrings first, then we'll have the meat. This smart, playful story never stops challenging and exhilarating the audience. And then it says ages 8 to 12. Is that true, do you think?
I think publishers these days have to do that kind of an age bracket, age sort of set up on the outside of a book because people are looking for it. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. The book seems to be appealing to a wider crowd. It actually just won a Young Adult Award. And
then that would be, 12 and up? Is that how they classify that?
Yeah, okay. Even a little older.
Well, look, it's a book for everybody because it's packed with red herrings and it's very meaty at the same time. Who can stay away from...
Well, I think the most interesting ideas are not necessarily ideas that come with an age limit. So,
true. Wait a minute. We have to talk about Brett Hellquist, the illustrator. Right. Who's he?
Brett is, the Lemony Snicket illustrator, and I was so lucky to get put together with him. He came to Hyde Park and visited all of the places in the book. So his illustrations, the 24 paintings that he did, they're actually acrylics for Chasing Vermeer, are all set in actual places. You can follow the book in real life through the neighborhood.
Yeah, and then he also started a puzzle at the illustrations.
He got inspired.
So you got puzzles in the book, puzzles in the illustrations.
Right, that was his idea.
Puzzles in the publishing house. I mean, it's an incredibly puzzling book.
He hid a coded message in the illustrations.
You have, I think, you show in this book a lot of sympathy, no empathy, I think, with the teacher, Miss Hussey. Some have suggested that there are recollections of your own life as a teacher in that school.
I think Ms. Hussey and I have lots in common philosophically. I don't think I was quite that wild. Okay. I definitely wouldn't have left people behind on field trips.
One of the characters I didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
Although, I do understand him in one sense because he's part of one of the puzzles, is Tommy Segovia. I mean, he's like off stage.
He's kind of a shadow character.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing not in this book. It's incredible. The more I think about it, the more it has, a shadow character who actually at the end, when we don't go into what that is, plays a very, very important role.
Yeah, I needed somebody who was kind of off stage to add sort of more dimension to the plot. And, when I was putting the book together, I read a lot of Agatha Christie's, not because I thought I could use her plots or her world, the sort of classic old-fashioned British mysteries, but because I felt I could learn from the way she turned her plot around. She has at least 2 twists in every novel. Yes. I think that was a help to me, reading some of the classic mystery people.
Okay. Everything in this novel that you put together is done very, very carefully. All right. All the main characters have names which are spelled in 12 letters. Okay. And Petra Andale, you can count it out there, folks. Petra, Petraandale, 12 letters. Petra is the main young woman character, and she's named after a mysterious place of buried secret, an ancient city in Jordan. This is lovely stuff. This is really, really nice. And Calder Pillay,
right?
He also has 12 characters in his name.
Yes, he does.
And I don't know. I wrote down here he's rather bookish, but is that true? Did I miss him somehow?
I think he's more the mathematical thinker of the two.
He has those pentominoes.
Yes, he carries,
which is another source of puzzles. Yeah, really.
He carries them around.
Yes, he does. And one of the things that Petra says in the book about art, I think is very important. She says, this was art that was an adventure. It let her into another world. It made familiar stuff seem mysterious. It sent her back to her life feeling a little different, at least for a few minutes. This is art's power, is it not?
Yeah, I had the kids trying to figure out what art was about. It was an assignment from their teacher, Ms. Hussey.
We have to stop that right there. I'm sorry. This has been Conversations on the Coast. The book is Chasing Vermeer. The author is Blue Balliett. And this has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.